welcome to LawSikho's thorough newspaper analysis for the 14th of June 2023. So today we have one editorial article from the Hindu and it talks about tax law in the shadow of higher judiciary. What it actually talks about is the way Supreme Court has intervened and interpreted some of the statutes which have been brought forward as amendments in our tax laws. For the second and the third segment of the day, we will have the news update and the legal news. Now, in today's article, Tax Law in the Shadow of Higher Judiciary, we know that India's law of taxation is based on two central conditions, or would rather say two central ideas. First is based on the idea that is given, or the notion that is given forward by Article 265 of the Indian Constitution, that a tax may be imposed only with the authority of law. Secondly, any levy ought to be clear, consistent, and predictable. Now, the question arises is why is this in the news? So, in order to deal with this, we will first have to look into the fact of what was the issue raised in ITO versus Vikram Sujit Kumar Bhatia. Uh, ITO versus Vikram Sujit Kumar Bhatia. So what happened is the Supreme Court has now reversed the judgments that have brought forth tax statutes that lack legislative support. That is, the Supreme Court has gone forward and interpreted the statute in such a manner that maybe it was not the intention of having it in such a way by the legislative assembly. So in the case of ITO versus Vikram Sujit Kumar Bhatia, the question was raised that whether an amendment to the tax statute would have retrospective effect. Now, the provision which was at stake, which was section 153C of the Act, which stipulates the conditions under which a search is made on a person's premises, could result in the opening of proceedings against other persons and entities. Now, before an amendment to the law in 2015, Section 153C allowed the revenue to proceed against third parties to a search if material was seized. These materials could be money or jewelry or book of accounts or bullion, and the phrase belongs or belong a person other than the one who was subject to the search. Now, on this occasion, at least three different high courts had held that the terms belongs or belongs to ought to be narrowly construed. In their reading, for incriminating material found during a search to serve as a basis for assessing persons alien to the search, that material must not merely relate to or pertain to such person, but must belong to them. Now, to overcome all of these problems and the entirety of the issue raised by three different high courts and how they had interpreted the statute, the law was amended in 2015. Section 153C now stipulated that assessments could be made against third parties to a search, even if the material seized in case of documents and book of accounts pertains or pertain to. So essentially what we are seeing is that the term belongs or belongs to is being replaced by pertains or pertains to. Now, this amendment was not made expressly retrospective. And in an event, the Gujarat High Court held that it could not be so because such an application would impine on the rights that had been vested on persons through the previous stipulation. However, the Supreme Court went forward and reversed this verdict. Now, its reasons for doing so can be gleaned from the judgment, and they are twofold. One, the old section 153C had been replaced by the amendment, and the words belongs or belong, as we discussed, were now replaced with pertains or pertain. And therefore, one must presume that the unamended provision never existed in law, not even before the date of the amendment. Two, the new law is declaratory, as in it seeks to explain an earlier provision and hence is retrospective. Now, the issue arises is that in the particular case, the Supreme Court was supposed to act as an interpreter of the law and not a lawmaker. Now, if we look into this, the reasons that the Supreme Court have given, they do not exactly add up. Section 153C has amended the provision through substitution, but the phrase belongs to continues to remain in the provision. What the altered law did was to add an additional stipulation that even material which was in the case of book of accounts or documents could serve as grounds for fresh proceedings. Therefore, the amendment by no means asserts what was always the position, but instead seeks to expand the law's domain with an eye to the future. Now, the court, in holding that it will apply to past searches and that the provisions will be retrospective, have acted as as not as an interpreter of law, but as a maker of the law. Further, in the case of the Union of India versus Ashish Agarwal, the court resuscitated notices of reassessment that had been issued by the revenue without any sanction of law. Now, despite the change in law, the revenue continued to issue notices in this particular case under a repealed provision deriving authority, it believed, from executive notification that extended timelines during the COVID-19 inflicted period. The High Court declared these notices invalid, but also pointed out that the Income Tax Department was at liberty to invoke a new law if the statute limitation so permitted. Now, there is no doubt that the quashing of these notices would have had some effect on the revenue. However, based on this, the court found that although it was not the government's pleaded case, the officers of the revenue may have been under a bona fide belief that the amendments may not yet have been enforced. Now, in other words, the state functionaries were ignorant of the law. So, in the Supreme Court's beliefs, mistakes of this kind must not be allowed to cost the exchequer. Hence, the quash notices were revived and were deemed to have been issued under the amended law. Now, the issue here is that the parties to the case, who were numbered in hundreds and thousands, did not so much as get an audience before the court. And through this entire activity, the court was not only encroaching on the legislative functions, which has now been alleged quite a number of times, but it was also giving life to what were otherwise entirely illegitimate actions based on the intent that the Legislative Assembly had derived it from. With this, we move on to the national news for the day. Firstly, we have Andhra Pradesh government schools to incorporate AI and ChatGPT in syllabus. Now, the Andhra Pradesh government has proposed to include artificial intelligence and its tools like ChatGPT and machine learning in school curricula. As a lot of us are aware, machine learning is something very, very expansive and is taught when you're in college as a part of the sweeping reforms being brought in the education sector. The School Education Department released a government order regarding the formation of a high level working group to equip the students of government schools with next generation education concepts and futuristic technologies. For the second segment of the day, we have for the second news article for the day, we have IPS officer Nitin Agarwal as the new BSF chief. Nitin Agarwal is a 1989 batch IPS officer of the Kerala cadre and was appointed as the new Director General of the Border Security Force more than 5 months after the post fell vacant. Mr. Agarwal is currently posted as the additional DG of Operations at the Central Reserve Police Force or the CRPF headquarters in Delhi. The post of the BSF chief had been vacant for more than 5 months after Pankaj Kumar Singh retired on the 31st of December 2022. Next up, we have FIH Pro League 2023, where India beat Argentina in final. India beat Argentina 2-1 in its final FIH Pro League 2022 to 2023 match in Eindhoven, the Netherlands. With this victory, India consolidated their position atop the FIH Pro League standings with 30 points from 16 matches. India now holds a 4-point advantage over second placed Great Britain in the FIH Pro League standings, but the European team has 4 games still to go. Next up, we have Indian Overseas Bank launches My Account, My Name feature. Now, this is very innovative because IOB said that the scheme is the first in the banking industry to let a customer choose his or her name or any name as an account number that can be used for all transaction purposes. The bank's managing director and chief executive officer launched the scheme called My Account, My Name virtually from a central office in Chennai. The scheme will be available at all 49 regional offices of the IOB in India. For the international news segment of the day, we have UAE emerges as the fourth largest investor in India in FY23. The data of the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade (DPIIT) reportedly showed that in the last fiscal, foreign direct investment from the UAE to India jumped over threefold to $3.35 billion from $1.03 billion in 2021 to 2022. As per the report, the UAE was the fourth largest investor in India in the last financial year, compared to seventh in the financial year 2021 to 2022. Singapore was the largest investor in India with a $17.2 billion of investment in the FY 2023, followed by Mauritius, $6.1 billion, and the US with a $6 billion investment. Now, for the legal updates of the day, we have dominant purpose of Section 125 CRPC is to ensure that neglected wife, child, parents are not left helpless. Now, the Kerala High Court, in the case of Dheera N.G and another versus Simesh S, recently enhanced the monthly maintenance allowance of the paralyzed estranged wife and son of headlord worker on taking note of the latter's neglect and refusal to maintain his wife and child. The single judge bench of Justice V.G. Arun observed that in such cases, the court ought to be aware of the dominant purpose behind Section 125 CRPC that stipulates for maintenance, which is that of ensuring that the neglected wife, child, and parents are not left in a helpless state of distress, destitution, and starvation. So this was all for today. For free study materials and TNA PDF slides, please join our Telegram channel, the link of which you can find in the description, or you can scan the barcode that is given on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe us on YouTube to stay up to date with the thorough newspaper analysis as it comes out every day. Thank you.